My baby chose the most dangerous hand in the city. Not mine. Not the nurse's, though the nurse had been the only person kind enough to give us a cup of water while we waited in the emergency clinic with nothing but a diaper bag, half a packet of crackers, and the kind of fear that makes your body feel hollow from the inside out. Not the security guard's, though he had crouched down and jingled his keys at her with the awkward gentleness of a man who did not know what to do with a crying baby, but wanted very badly to help. Not the old woman sitting across from us, who smiled whenever my daughter hiccuped through her tears and told me, in a voice softened by age, that babies always knew more than grown people gave them credit for. My daughter reached out from my arms in the lobby of Blackthorn Medical, stretched her tiny hand toward a woman everyone else in the room was trying very hard not to look at, and wrapped all 5 of her fingers around the bare hand of Ravenna Kale, the Mafia queen of the southern districts, the alpha who owned half the city outright and frightened the other half into pretending she did not. The woman whose name made men lower their voices, whose empire was built on debt, loyalty, silence, and the careful removal of anyone foolish enough to mistake her calm for softness. And my 11-month-old daughter grabbed her hand. Not her sleeve. Not the edge of her coat. Her hand. The one with the thin white scars across the knuckles. The one every guard in the room knew better than to touch. The room stopped breathing. The receptionist froze with her fingers above the keyboard. The nurse went pale. The 2 men standing behind Ravenna shifted at once, not reaching for weapons, not exactly, but moving with the frightening precision of people trained to turn a mistake into a consequence before anyone had time to apologize for it. I felt the world narrow down to one small point. My daughter's fist. Ravenna Kale's hand. My heartbeat, wild and useless in my throat. "Ren," I whispered because my voice would not go louder. "Baby, no, let go." But Ren did not let go. She looked up at Ravenna with her tear-wet cheeks and her fever-bright eyes, and the stubborn, open certainty that had terrified me since the day she was born, because it meant she had come into the world already knowing how to want things. Then she smiled. At the Mafia queen. Ravenna Kale looked down at my daughter. Her face did not change in the way I expected. It did not harden. It did not sharpen. It did not become the kind of expression people warned you about in alleys and staff rooms and whispered conversations after midnight. Instead, something in her went very still. Not cold. Not empty. Still, the way deep water is still before it decides whether to drown you or carry you. I tried to pull Ren back. Ravenna's fingers closed carefully around my daughter's hand. Not tight. Not possessive. Just enough to keep her from being pulled away too quickly. "Careful," she said. Her voice was low, controlled, rough at the edges in a way that made every other sound in the room feel unnecessary. She reached for me. My mouth went dry. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm so sorry. She's sick and she doesn't know." "She knows enough to hold on," Ravenna said. Then she looked at me. For the first time, truly looked. And I understood, with the kind of certainty that arrives too late to be useful, that she was seeing everything. The too thin coat. The hospital bracelet on Ren's ankle from the clinic we had left without paying, because no one had come to discharge us, and I had heard my name at the front desk. The bruise on my wrist, where a man had grabbed me outside the bus station. The diaper bag packed too full, because it was not just a diaper bag. It was everything we owned that still mattered. Ravenna's gaze moved from my face to the glass doors behind me. Outside, across the rain-slick street, 2 men in gray coats stood beneath the awning of a closed pharmacy. Watching. Waiting. My knees almost gave out. Ravenna saw them too. The hand not holding my daughter lifted by half an inch. One of her guards moved immediately. Not toward me. Toward the door. "No," I said before I could stop myself. "Please, I don't want trouble." Ravenna looked back at me. Trouble already found you. Ren made a small, pleased sound and squeezed her fingers around Ravenna's hand, as though she had been part of the conversation and agreed with that assessment. For one impossible second, the most feared woman in the city looked down at my baby like she had been given an instruction she intended to obey. Then Ravenna Kale said the sentence that ended the life I had been running through. "Prepare the north rooms." One of her men looked at her. "Madam." Her voice did not rise. "They are coming with me." I stopped breathing. "I can't," I said. Ravenna's eyes returned to mine. "You can." "No, you don't understand. I can't go with you. I don't know you." "No," she said, "but your daughter has better instincts than everyone in this room." Ren laughed then. A tiny sound. Exhausted, feverish, trusting. Still holding Ravenna's hand. And Ravenna Kale, who had broken men for touching what belonged to her, looked at my baby's fingers around hers and said quietly, "I am not letting go first." That was the moment I understood we had been caught. What I did not understand yet was that, for the first time in almost a year, being caught would not be the same thing as being trapped. Before we begin, if you love emotional GL stories about mafia queens, single mothers, hidden danger, babies who choose their own family, and love that grows from protection into home, subscribe and leave a comment telling me where in the world you are watching from. I read everyone. Now let us go back to the beginning, before the hand, before the clinic, before the mafia queen looked at my daughter and decided the city would have to go through her first. Part 1, the mother who was running. I did not go to Blackthorn Medical because I trusted doctors. I went because Ren's fever had reached the number I had promised myself I would not ignore. That was how I had been living for months by then. Promises to myself. Lines drawn in the dark. If the fever reaches this number, I go. If the rent is late by 3 days, I call. If he finds this address, I leave. If the men in gray coats appear twice, I stop pretending they are coincidence. My name is Alara Moss. I was 25 years old, an Omega, and the mother of an 11-month-old girl named Ren, who had my mouth, her father's dark eyes, and a grip strong enough to leave half-moon marks in anyone who tried to take something from her before she was finished with it. She was born in the back room of a women's clinic during a summer storm, 6 weeks after Sila's crane told me a baby would ruin his life, and 3 days after I learned he had already ruined mine. Sila's was not a bad man, in the simple way people like stories to make men bad. He did not shout all the time. He did not hit me where anyone could see. He did not begin as someone I knew to be dangerous. He began as charming, careful, generous in the way careless alphas can be generous when nothing has yet required consistency from them. He had a laugh people trusted, and a face that made strangers forgive him before he asked. When I first met him, I was working front desk at a hotel near the river, taking extra shifts because I was saving for a proper apartment and still believed proper apartments happened to people like me if we worked hard enough and wanted quietly enough. Sila's stayed in Suite 12 for 4 nights. By the second night, he knew my coffee order. By the third, he knew I was an Omega without family in the city. By the fourth, he knew exactly which lonelinesses to press his thumb against until they sounded like love. I did not know then that the Crane name meant something. Not to ordinary people. To the kind of people who collected debts in back rooms and settled arguments in warehouses with covered windows. Silas told me his family was complicated. I believed him. That was the first mistake. The second was loving him after he showed me the first version of himself I should have run from. The third was telling him I was pregnant. He went very quiet. Not shocked. Not happy. Not even angry. Just quiet, the way a person goes quiet when a calculation has changed. 3 days later, he was gone. By the end of that week, so was the money from our shared account. By the end of that month, I learned he had used my name as a secondary guarantor on a debt I had never seen, signed documents with my identification, and listed my address as the contact point for repayment. I was 8 weeks pregnant when the first man came to the hotel. He wore a gray coat. He asked for me by my full name. He smiled as though we were old friends. "Mr. Crane has made himself difficult to reach," he said, "but you are here." I tried to explain. He listened politely. Then he placed a photograph on the counter. It was me, leaving the clinic. One hand on my stomach. One hand holding the strap of my bag. A person still small enough to believe fear had limits. "Debts do not disappear because the person who made them lacks courage," he said. "They pass to whoever remains useful." I quit the hotel that night. That was the beginning of running. Not running in the dramatic sense. No midnight car chase. No suitcase thrown into the back of a waiting cab while rain came down like an accusation. Real running is smaller than that. It is deleting accounts, changing clinics, using cash, sleeping lightly, not telling friendly people too much, never taking the same route to work 2 days in a row, learning which bus stops have cameras and which ones have broken lights. After Ren was born, running became harder. Babies make hiding difficult because babies are honest. They cry when they hurt. They laugh when they are happy. They reach for the world with both hands and do not understand why their mother flinches every time a door opens too quickly. For 11 months, I kept us alive by taking work that paid cash and asking no questions of people who asked none of me. Laundry shifts, night cleaning, sorting medical files in a basement office where the supervisor pretended not to notice that I brought a baby carrier and kept it tucked beneath the desk. I lived in rented rooms, borrowed rooms, a converted storage space above a bakery, and once, for 2 nights, in the back of a church hall where the pipes groaned like something alive, and the floor smelled permanently of old rain. I told Ren stories through all of it. Quiet ones. Stories about birds with brave wings. About girls who found doors in walls. About mothers who were tired, but still knew the way forward because mothers always knew one more step, even when one more step was all they knew. The truth was, I did not know the way forward. I knew only how to keep going. By the time Ren's fever came, I had been awake for almost 30 hours. We were staying in a room above a closed tailor shop in the East District, a room rented to me by a woman named Mina who had 2 sons, a bad knee, and the sort of kindness that had to be disguised as irritation so the world would not take advantage of it. "You should go to a clinic," Mina said when she saw Ren's flushed face. "I can't. Because of money. Because of names." She understood. People in our part of the city always understood more than they said. But Ren's skin was too hot. Her breathing was too shallow. At 2 in the afternoon, I packed the diaper bag with formula, 2 changes of clothes, the cash I had hidden in the hem of my coat, the fake identification card I hated using, and the small cloth bird Ren slept with pressed under her chin. Then I took my daughter to Blackthorn Medical. I chose it because it was in a neutral district. That was what people said. Neutral. As if there was any square inch of the city not already claimed by someone. Blackthorn Medical served everyone who could pay and a few people who could not, as long as those people were useful to someone who could. It was clean, private, efficient, and expensive enough that I had no business stepping through its doors. But Ren had reached the number, and I had made myself a promise. For 3 hours, no one noticed us. Then the receptionist asked for my identification. I gave the fake one. She typed for too long. Her eyes flicked once to Ren, once to me, once to the small red light beneath her monitor. Then she smiled the way people smile when someone has told them to keep you standing there until someone else arrives. "Just a moment, Ms. Moss." Not the name on the card. My real name. My body went cold. I picked up Ren. I left the clinic before they could stop me. I made it as far as the lobby. Then the rain started. Then the men in gray coats appeared across the street. Then Ravenna Kale walked through the doors. Part 2, the hand nobody touched. The first thing everyone noticed about Ravenna Kale was not her beauty. Though she was beautiful. Not softly. Not in the way people praised when they wanted beauty to be harmless. Ravenna was beautiful the way a blade is beautiful when it catches light. Clean lines. Dark eyes. Black hair cut to her jaw and tucked behind one ear with a precision that made the gesture seem less like grooming and more like a warning. She wore a charcoal coat over a black suit. No visible jewelry except a narrow silver ring on her smallest finger and a watch so plain it had to be custom-made. Her mouth looked like it had learned restraint early and never forgotten the lesson. But the first thing people noticed was not her face. It was her hands. Or rather, the way she kept them from being touched. Ravenna Kale wore gloves in public. Always. Soft black leather. Perfectly fitted. Rumor said the gloves were vanity. Rumor said the gloves hid blood. Rumor said an enemy had once tried to force Ravenna to her knees by breaking every finger of her right hand. And 3 months later, she had used that same hand to sign the papers that dismantled his entire family's empire. Rumor said a man had grabbed her wrist at a negotiation 10 years ago and was now a name people avoided saying near the river. I did not know which version was true. I knew only that when Ravenna entered Blackthorn Medical, every person in the lobby looked at her hands and then looked away. She had removed one glove. That was the impossible detail. The one small opening in the armor through which my daughter reached. Ravenna had come in with 2 guards behind her and a doctor already moving quickly from the corridor to meet her. There was a small cut near her temple, a darker stain at the cuff of her shirt. She looked unbothered by both. The doctor spoke first. "Madam Kale, we have a room ready." "I need 7 minutes," she said. "You may need stitches." "I need 7 minutes." No one argued. That was the shape of her power. Not loud. Not theatrical. Simply present and therefore final. She stepped into the lobby as the glass doors closed behind her, cutting off the sound of the rain. Her scent moved through the air a heartbeat later. Alpha. Not the thick, careless kind that fills a room because it cannot control itself. Ravenna's scent was controlled so precisely, it felt intentional. Cedar smoke. Black tea. Winter air against stone. Something metallic underneath, not blood exactly, but the memory of it. Every omega instinct I had spent the last year burying woke all at once, and made a terrible, hopeful mistake. It wanted safety. My body felt the presence of a powerful alpha, and before my mind could remind it that power and safety were not the same thing, it leaned toward her. I hated myself for that. I tightened my hold on Ren. Ren, feverish and miserable, and deeply offended by the entire medical system, lifted her head from my shoulder. She saw Ravenna. She stopped crying. That should have warned me. Ren did not stop crying for strangers. She did not perform for people. She did not give her trust away easily, not because she had learned fear, but because she had inherited my stubbornness and improved upon it. Ravenna was speaking to the doctor. Her ungloved hand was at her side. The scars across her knuckles were pale against olive skin. Ren reached. I shifted too late. Her small body lunged with surprising force, one arm outstretched, fingers opening and closing with desperate purpose. Ren. Her hand landed around Ravenna's first 2 fingers. The lobby died. There is a kind of silence that comes from shock. There is another kind that comes from everyone in a room understanding that a rule has been broken, and no one knows yet what punishment will follow. This was the second kind. Ravenna looked down. Ren's fingers tightened. I began apologizing before I knew what words I was using. I'm sorry, she's sick. She doesn't know I didn't mean. Ravenna lifted her other hand. Every guard stopped moving. So did I. She did not touch me. She did not touch Ren's wrist. She turned her scarred hand slightly, palm up, so my daughter's grip became easier. Ren exhaled. Then she leaned forward and pressed her hot cheek against Ravenna's knuckles. The Mafia queen closed her eyes. Only for 1 second. But I saw it. A flicker. A break in the surface. Something old and startled moving beneath all that control. When her eyes opened, they were on me. What is her name? I swallowed. Ren. How high is the fever? I don't know. It was 39.4 when we left the room. I brought her here, but they... I stopped. Too late. Ravenna's gaze shifted past me to the reception desk. The receptionist had gone white. What did they do? Ravenna asked. Nothing. Ravenna waited. That was worse than being questioned. She simply waited with my daughter holding her hand, and the waiting made the lie feel childish. They used my real name, I said quietly. A muscle moved once in Ravenna's jaw. And your real name is dangerous. I did not answer. The glass doors behind us opened. Rain rushed in. So did one of the men in the gray coats. He was smiling. He had a polite face. I had learned to fear polite faces most. Elara Moss, he said, we've been looking for you. Ravenna did not turn around immediately. She looked down at Ren. Ren looked back at her as if she had personally arranged this solution and expected the adults to catch up. Then Ravenna said, "Have you?" The man in gray paused. He recognized her voice before he recognized her. That was obvious. His expression changed one controlled fraction at a time. "Madam Kale," he said, "this is a private matter." "No," Ravenna said. She gently shifted her hand, and Ren's fingers curled tighter around hers. "This is a child with a fever holding my hand in a medical lobby, while 2 men wait outside to frighten her mother." Her eyes lifted. "That makes it mine." Part 3, the debt that followed us. The man in gray did not argue after that. People like him understood territory. They understood when something belonged to someone stronger than they were. Not belonged in the soft sense. Not loved. Not chosen. Just marked by attention. In our city, attention was often as good as ownership and sometimes more dangerous. He stepped back. Ravenna's guard stepped forward. The difference between those 2 movements was the difference between a threat and a conclusion. The man left without another word. But he looked at me before he went. Not with defeat. With patience. That was the look that followed me into the elevator 5 minutes later, after Ravenna told the Dr. Ren would be examined in her private room, and told the receptionist she would be reviewing every camera feed in the building by morning. That look said, "This is not over." I knew it was not over. Debts did not stop because a powerful woman interrupted them. They waited. They changed hands. They became paper, then rumor, then leverage. Silas had taught me that without meaning to teach me anything useful. In the elevator, Ren still held Ravenna's hand. She had allowed the doctor to check her temperature only because Ravenna remained within reach. She had screamed when I tried to take her back fully. Not a tired cry. Not a sick cry. A furious, betrayed sound that said I had misunderstood something important, and she was disappointed in me for it. "I'm sorry," I said again. Ravenna looked down at my daughter, who was now seated against my chest, but still gripping Ravenna's fingers like an anchor. "You apologize often." "I have a lot to apologize for." "No," she said. "You have been taught that apology makes you smaller and therefore safer." I looked away. The elevator climbed. The numbers changed in smooth gold, light above the doors. I became aware of every terrible thing about myself at once. The damp ends of my hair. the stain on my sleeve from Ren's medicine, the old shoes, the coat with cash sewn badly into the hem, the fact that I was standing beside a woman whose watch probably cost more than every room I had rented since Ren was born. "I'll pay you back," I said. Ravenna's gaze moved to me. "For what?" "The doctor, the room, whatever this is." Her expression did not change, but the air did. Just slightly. Enough that my Omega instincts went still. "You think I brought you upstairs to create a debt? I think people like you don't do things for free." One of her guards made the smallest sound. Not amusement. Warning. Ravenna did not look at him. "People like me," she said, "understand the difference between investment, mercy, and waste." The elevator doors opened. She stepped out first. Ren's hand stretched between us, refusing to release her. Ravenna stopped immediately, so my daughter would not be pulled. That detail did something to me. A ridiculous detail. A dangerous one. She did not tug. She did not force. She adjusted her stride to the baby holding her hand. I had been dragged through so many rooms, by so many circumstances, that the sight of someone powerful slowing down, because Ren needed her to made my throat close. "This," Ravenna continued, "is none of those." "What is it, then?" She looked at Ren. Ren blinked back, feverish and solemn. "I don't know yet." That was the first honest thing she gave me. Not comfort. Not explanation. Honesty. The private medical suite looked nothing like any clinic room I had ever seen. Soft lights. A bed wide enough for 2 people. A sitting area. A door leading to a bathroom where folded towels waited in a stack, so perfect I was afraid to touch them. The doctor examined Ren, while Ravenna stood near the window, one hand still captive. "A viral infection," he said. "Dehydration, mild but concerning. Exhaustion. Medicine. Fluids. Rest. Rest." I almost laughed when he said it. Not because it was funny. Because rest had become one of those words that belonged to other people. Like savings. Like family. Like home. Ren slept after the medicine. She fell asleep in the curve between my arm and Ravenna's hand, her fingers still wrapped loosely around 2 of Ravenna's. The doctor left. The guards left. The door closed. And then I was alone with the Mafia queen. I waited for the price. Ravenna stood beside the bed and looked down at my daughter. "She is small," she said. "She's 11 months. That is not what I mean." I knew. Ren was small because life had been harder on her than it should have been. Because I watered down formula twice in the worst week and cried in the bathroom afterward where she could not see me. Because there were days I ate only what she dropped. Because stress had lived in my body while I carried her, and then in the room beside us after she was born. "She's strong," I said, because it was the only defense I had. Ravenna looked at me. "Yes." The way she said it made it sound like a vow. Not praise. A vow. "Who is Silas Crane to you?" The question hit like a hand around my throat. I stood too fast. Ren stirred. Ravenna's fingers tightened just slightly beneath hers. The baby settled. "I should go," I said. "No. You can't keep us here." "No," she said, "I cannot." That answer stopped me. She looked at me steadily. "The door is not locked. My men will not stop you. If you want to leave, I will have a car take you anywhere you name. But if you walk into the street with a sick child while Crane men are watching the exits, then you are not leaving because you are free. You are leaving because fear has trained you to mistake flight for choice." I hated her then. For being right. For saying it calmly. For standing there in her expensive coat with my daughter's hand wrapped around hers and seeing too much. "Why do you care?" I asked. The words came out sharper than I meant them to. Ravenna looked down at Ren again. Her face was unreadable, but her thumb moved once, almost without permission, against the back of Ren's tiny hand. Because she reached, she said. A pause. And because no one reaches for my hand, unless something in them already knows the fall is coming. Part 4, the Queen's private room. I told her the truth badly. In pieces. Out of order. With gaps where shame sat too heavily to move. I told her about Sela's, but not everything. I told her about the debt, but not the nights I had spent sitting upright with a chair wedged under the door handle, because I was afraid the men in gray had found the building. I told her about Ren's birth, but not that I had wanted Sela's there until the very last hour, even after everything, because some foolish part of me had believed becoming a father might make him become the person he had pretended to be. I told her about the forged identification card, the rooms, the cash jobs, the receptionist using my name, the men outside. Ravenna listened without interrupting. That was almost worse than judgment. People always interrupted stories like mine. They interrupted to reassure themselves, to ask why I had not left sooner, as if leaving was a door and not a maze, to tell me about a shelter they had once donated to explain that courts existed, to suggest family, friends, police, agencies, systems, all the soft words people use when they have not learned how often soft words turn to smoke in your hands. Ravenna did not offer soft words. She asked precise questions. How much was the debt? I don't know. That means large enough to be useful as a leash. I flinched. Her eyes narrowed. Has Sela seen the child? No. Has he acknowledged her legally? No. Does he know her name? I don't think so. Do not think, no. I swallowed. No, he doesn't know her name. Some tension in Ravenna eased. Not much. Enough. Good. I looked at her. Good. A name is a handle. If he does not have hers, he has one less way to pull. I hated that she was right again. Ren slept between us. At some point, Ravenna sat down in the chair beside the bed because Ren's hand would not let her stand at a comfortable distance. She did it without complaint, without making the baby release her, without making me feel foolish for noticing. The chair was too small for her presence. Or perhaps every chair was. She sat with one ankle crossed over the other, coat open now, the cut near her temple cleaned but not bandaged because she had refused stitches until Ren was asleep. You're bleeding, I said. It stopped. It didn't. She looked vaguely irritated, as though her body had failed to follow instructions. I reached for the gauze the doctor had left. Then I stopped, because reaching toward Ravenna Kale's face felt like a worse idea than letting her bleed. Her eyes moved to my hand, then to my face. You may. 2 words. Permission. Not order. Not expectation. Permission. My fingers were not steady when I cleaned the cut. She stayed still. I could feel the heat of her skin beneath the gauze. Alpha warmth. Controlled breath. Cedar smoke and black tea and winter air. Ren slept. The rain tapped against the windows. For a few minutes, the room became something impossible. Quiet. Not safe. I did not trust safe yet. But quiet. When I finished, Ravenna caught my wrist. Gently. So gently that the fear came not from the touch, but from how badly part of me wanted to lean into it. Her eyes were on the bruise there. The one from the bus station. Who did this? No one. Ilara. My name in her mouth was careful. Not soft. Careful. As though names mattered because handles mattered, and she had no intention of using mine the way Sela's had used everything else. One of Crane's men, I said. Her thumb did not touch the bruise. It hovered near it. That restraint broke something open in me. Not completely. Just enough for tears to come, sudden and humiliating. I turned away. "I'm tired," I said, which was not what I meant. "I know." "No, you don't." "No," she said, "I don't." That answer undid me further. She did not claim my pain. Did not make it smaller by pretending to understand all of it. She simply sat there with my daughter, holding her hand, and let the truth exist without trying to decorate it. After a long while, Ravenna released my wrist. "There are two options," she said. My body tightened. There it was. The price. The first, my doctor treats your daughter, my driver takes you and the child to a secure place outside the city, and I remove the men currently following you from the board. You will have enough money for 6 months and documents that will pass ordinary inspection. I stared at her. "That's not an option, that's..." "An option," she said. "Do not interrupt me when I am giving you one." I closed my mouth. "The second," she said, "is that you stay under my protection until the Crane matter is resolved." I looked down at Wren. Her hand still held Ravenna's, as if she had already voted. "Under your protection means what?" "It means rooms in my house, medical care, legal representation, work if you want it, silence if you need it, doors that lock from your side, no debt." I laughed once. A broken sound. "No debt," I repeated. "No debt. People like you don't protect people like me without owning them." Ravenna's expression changed then. Not dramatically, but enough that I knew I had touched something sharp. "I own businesses," she said. "Territory, contracts, favors owed by men who should have known better than to bargain with me." Her gaze dropped to Wren. "I do not own frightened mothers or feverish children." Wren shifted in her sleep. Her fingers loosened. For the first time since the lobby, Ravenna could have taken her hand back. She did not. She waited until Wren settled again. Then she looked at me. "Your daughter grabbed my hand," she said. "I am offering you the chance to decide what that means." Part 5, The House Behind the Iron Trees. Ravenna Kale's house was not called a mansion. People called it the house behind the iron trees. I had heard the name before, usually in the same tone people used for hospitals, prisons, and churches. Places where lives changed, whether you wanted them to or not. It sat on the western hill above the river, behind a line of black ironwood trees that had been planted generations ago and grown into each other, until their branches formed a wall more effective than stone. The gates opened before the car reached them. No one asked for identification. No one needed to. The car was Ravenna's. Therefore the road belonged to her until she was done using it. Wren slept through the drive. Her fever had dropped. Her hand, however, had not accepted the end of its arrangement. She had woken halfway through the ride, realized Ravenna was in the seat across from us instead of beside us, and made a sound so wounded that Ravenna looked up from her phone as if someone had called her name. "Do you want her?" I asked before I could stop myself. Ravenna's eyes moved to mine. Not surprised. "Careful." That is not my question to answer. I looked at Wren. Wren reached both hands toward her. That was how my daughter entered Ravenna Kale's house. In the arms of the Mafia queen. With one fist wrapped around the lapel of Ravenna's coat, and the other holding her scarred hand like a prize. Staff lined the entry hall. Not formally. Not obviously. But I saw them. Housekeeper. Driver. 2 guards. An older woman with silver hair and an expression so composed, it made Mrs. Hale from Expensive House Stories seem reckless. They looked at Ravenna. Then at Wren. Then at me. No one said anything. Ravenna stopped in the center of the hall. "This is Alara Moss," she said. "This is her daughter Wren." The silver-haired woman inclined her head. "I am Sabine," she said. "I manage the house." I waited for the look, the calculation, the polite contempt. It did not come. Sabine looked at Wren with the solemn respect some adults reserve for sleeping babies and important documents. Shall I have the north rooms prepared, madam? They should already be prepared. They are. Then why ask? To give you the pleasure of confirming that your orders were obeyed. Ravenna stared at her. Sabine stared back. I learned later that Sabine had worked for Ravenna's mother before Ravenna inherited anything, and therefore had the rare privilege of speaking to the Mafia queen as though she were still occasionally a difficult child. Wren sneezed. Ravenna looked down immediately. The entire hall watched her do it. That was the first crack in the legend. Not large, but visible. The north rooms were warm. That was the first thing I noticed. Heat had become a luxury in my mind, the kind of thing I rationed with sweaters and blankets and the quiet hope that Wren would not kick off her socks. These rooms were warm as a held breath. A bedroom with pale walls and heavy curtains. A sitting room with a fireplace already lit. A bathroom with a tub deep enough for Wren to splash in when she was better. And beside the bedroom, a smaller room where someone had placed a crib. A real crib. White wood. Clean mattress. Soft sheets. A mobile of tiny carved birds hanging above it. I stood in the doorway and could not move. The birds turned slowly in the heated air. Wren made a small sound. Not quite a word. A rising note of recognition, as though she had found something she had been expecting. Ravenna stood beside me. Her hand was free now. Wren had finally fallen asleep fully and been placed in the crib by the doctor who met us at the house. The absence of Wren's grip seemed to bother Ravenna more than she wanted anyone to know. She flexed her fingers once. Only once. I saw. She saw me see. Neither of us said anything. This is too much, I said. No. It is. No, she repeated. Too much would be forcing gratitude from you before you have slept. This is furniture. I turned to look at her. She looked back. Completely serious. That was the problem with Ravenna Kale. Her cruelty, I had expected. Her danger, I understood. Her generosity was impossible because she refused to perform it. She did not soften her voice and ask if I liked the room. She did not tell me I was safe. She did not look at the crib as though she had saved us and wanted the scene to acknowledge her as savior. She gave instructions. She solved problems. She stood in the warmth she had arranged and pretended it was nothing because perhaps, to her, the doing of a necessary thing did not require applause. I have work, she said after a moment. Sabine will bring food. The doctor will check Wren again in 2 hours. No one enters without your permission unless there is a medical emergency. I nodded. She turned to leave. Wren woke. Not fully. Just enough to lift her head from the mattress, see Ravenna moving toward the door, and make one furious, broken cry. Ravenna stopped. Her back went still. I closed my eyes. Wren, baby, no. Wren cried harder. Ravenna turned around. The Mafia queen of the southern districts crossed the room, removed her coat, sat down in the chair beside the crib, and extended one finger through the bars. Wren grabbed it. Silence. Immediate. Complete. Ravenna looked down at the tiny hand, wrapped around her finger. Then at me. I will work here, she said. And she did. For 3 hours, Ravenna Kale sat in the nursery chair with a laptop balanced on one knee, issuing quiet instructions that made grown men on the other end of the phone sound increasingly nervous, while my daughter slept with one hand around her finger. I slept on the floor beside the crib because I was too tired to make it to the bed. When I woke once, half dreaming and afraid, Ravenna was still there. Her voice was low. No, she was saying into the phone. You will not approach Crane directly. You will follow the paper, men lie. Paper is vain and therefore easier to catch. A pause. Yes, I am aware of the time. Another pause. No, I am not leaving. Her eyes were on Ren. Because my hand is occupied. Part 6. The Rules of Protection. The next morning, I expected the spell to break. That was what good things did in my experience. They arrived in moments too strange to be trusted and vanished when daylight made everyone practical again. I woke in a bed with clean sheets. For 3 seconds, I did not know where I was. Then I heard Ren. Not crying. Babbling. I sat up too fast, heart crashing, and found her on the rug in the nursery with Sabine sitting across from her, as though they were in a formal negotiation. Between them lay 3 wooden blocks. Ren was holding one. Sabine held another. The third appeared to be disputed territory. Your daughter drives a hard bargain, Sabine said without looking up. I gripped the doorframe. Where is Ravenna? In her office. The relief I felt was unreasonable. Unwanted. Immediate. I hated it. Sabine looked at me then. She left at dawn. She returned twice to check the fever, and once because Ren woke and reached toward the door. I looked at Ren. Ren smiled at me with the shameless joy of a baby who had never once considered whether her desires were inconvenient. How is she? Better, the doctor is pleased. I nearly cried again. I did not. Barely. Sabine pretended not to notice, which made me like her despite my best efforts. After breakfast, Ravenna came to the north rooms. She knocked. That mattered. I had been in her house less than 24 hours, and still she knocked on a door that belonged to her. Come in, I said. She entered with a folder in one hand and no gloves. I noticed that immediately. So did Ren. My daughter dropped the wooden spoon. She had been chewing and crawled toward Ravenna with the urgency of a person late to an appointment. Ravenna stopped walking. Ren reached her shoe, pulled herself up against Ravenna's trouser leg, and held out both hands. There was a pause. A very small one. Then Ravenna bent and picked her up. Correctly. Not awkwardly. Not with the stiff panic of someone unused to babies. With careful competence. Ren settled against her shoulder and patted her cheek. Ravenna accepted this with the expression of a woman enduring an inspection by a superior authority. I stared. You've held babies before. My cousin had children. That doesn't explain why you look like you know what you're doing. I pay attention. That was Ravenna's answer to everything. She paid attention. To exits. To debts. To fevers. To babies who reached for her hand. She sat in the armchair with Ren in her lap and opened the folder. I need to explain the terms of your stay. My stomach tightened. There it was. The daylight. The practical shape of whatever cage I had walked into. Ravenna glanced at me. Breathes, Alara. I hated that she noticed. I hated more that I obeyed. There are no terms that require repayment, she said. There are rules. They exist to prevent confusion. Rules usually exist to control people. Yes, she said, bad rules do. Ren attempted to eat the corner of the folder. Ravenna moved it slightly out of range, without looking away from me. These rules are mine. First, your rooms are yours. No one enters without permission. Second, you may leave the house when you choose, but until the Crane matter is resolved, you will take security with you. That sounds like permission with a leash. It is a warning with logistics. I looked at her. She looked back. No apology. No softening. Just truth. Third, she continued, you are not required to tell me anything you do not want to tell me. But if something concerns your safety or Ren's, I expect accuracy. Not obedience. Accuracy. Ren slapped one hand on the folder, as if agreeing. Fourth, you will meet with my lawyer this afternoon. Silas Crane's debt is fraudulent if your account is accurate. I intend to make that legally inconvenient for him. You intend? I do. Why? Ravenna looked down as Wren began examining the silver ring on her smallest finger. Because men like Silas survive by making exhausted women prove the obvious. Her voice stayed even. Her eyes did not. I dislike inefficient cruelty. That was not the full truth. I knew it. So did she. But it was enough for that morning. And work, I asked. If you want it. I need it. No, she said. You want the dignity of it. That is different from needing it under threat. I looked away. She waited. I used to work front desk, I said. Before Silas, scheduling, records, payments, I'm good with systems. Good, Ravenna said. My archives are a disaster. I blinked. Your archives? Sabine says they are organized. Sabine lies when sentiment interferes with accuracy. From the doorway, Sabine said, I heard that. You were intended to. Wren laughed. Not because she understood. Because Ravenna's voice had changed. Only slightly. But Wren heard it. So did I. That was the first morning. The first set of rules. The first time I understood that Ravenna Kale's protection was not soft. It was structured. Specific. Built like a wall, not a blanket. And for someone who had spent a year sleeping beside doors that did not lock properly, a wall felt like mercy. Part 7, the baby's favorite hand. By the end of the first week, everyone in the house knew Wren had chosen Ravenna's right hand. Not Ravenna. Not generally. Not her presence or her voice, or the fact that she somehow always smelled faintly of cedar smoke, even in rooms where no fire had been lit. Her right hand. The scarred one. The hand people avoided looking at. The hand Ravenna kept bare inside the house and gloved outside it. Wren wanted that hand. If Ravenna entered the room, Wren reached. If Ravenna sat near her crib, Wren extended one imperious arm through the bars and opened and closed her fingers until Ravenna gave her what she wanted. If Ravenna attempted to sign documents while holding Wren, Wren placed her palm directly over Ravenna's knuckles and objected loudly to any movement not approved by her. Ravenna adjusted. That was the part I could not stop watching. The adjustment. A woman who commanded rooms, rerouted shipments, ended negotiations with 3 quiet words, and made dangerous people sweat through expensive shirts, adjusted her life around a baby's grip. She learned to scroll with her left hand. She held calls on speaker so Wren could keep her fingers. She developed a habit of placing her right hand palm up on the rug whenever she sat with Wren, as if offering it before the demand could be made. Wren accepted this as her due. The house accepted it as law. I told myself not to read meaning into it. I failed. The first time Ravenna came to the archives, I was sitting on the floor surrounded by boxes that had not been opened in years. The archives were not a disaster. They were a crime. Receipts mixed with letters. Property maps folded into medical files. Old contracts tied with ribbon and labeled in handwriting that changed 3 times in 1 decade. Ravenna stood in the doorway and surveyed the room. I told Sabine. You told her it was a disaster. This is a hostage situation. The corner of Ravenna's mouth moved. Barely. I stared at it because I had never seen her almost smile at something I said. Wren, sitting on a blanket beside me with a wooden bird in each hand, looked up at Ravenna and shrieked with joy. Ravenna crossed the room. Wren reached. The hand was given. Of course. You're spoiling her, I said. Ravenna looked down at my daughter, who was now chewing on her thumb while maintaining custody of 2 of Ravenna's fingers. Yes. I waited for more. There was no more. You admit it. It is accurate. She'll expect everyone to give her everything she wants. No, Ravenna said. She will expect the people who love her to be consistent. That is different. The room became too quiet. Ravenna realized what she had said at the same time I did. Not because her expression changed, because the air changed around what she did not take back. The people who love her. Love. Not protect. Not tolerate. Not indulge. Love. Wren banged one wooden bird against Ravenna's wrist. Ravenna looked down. The moment passed because babies are merciful that way. They interrupt unbearable truths before adults can ruin them by speaking too much. I returned to the boxes. Ravenna remained. She said she had come to ask about a shipping ledger. The ledger took 7 minutes to find. She stayed for 52. During that time, Wren crawled between us, transferring wooden birds, ribbon scraps, and one very important envelope from my pile to Ravenna's lap and back again. Ravenna treated each item as if it had legal significance. When Wren placed a torn receipt in her hand, Ravenna examined it. Concerning, she said. Wren squealed. Very concerning, Ravenna added. I laughed. The sound startled me. It startled Ravenna too. She looked at me in a way that made the laughter catch and turn into something warmer, more dangerous. What? I asked. You should do that more often. Organize your hostage archives. Laugh. I looked away too quickly. Ravenna did not press. She never pressed where silence had a reason. That was how she became dangerous in a new way. Not because she pushed. Because she waited. Because she noticed. Because she could have taken up every inch of every room and instead left space for me to step forward when I was ready. That evening, Wren took her first supported steps between us. Not her first steps. Not quite. She held my hand with one of hers and Ravenna's with the other, lifted one determined foot, and stomped it onto the rug like she was claiming land. I made a sound that was embarrassingly close to a sob. Ravenna went completely still. Wren took another step. Then another. Her face opened into wonder. Mine did too. When she reached Ravenna, she collapsed against her legs and laughed. Ravenna bent and picked her up. The expression on her face was not one I had seen before. Open. Not fully. Not safely. But open enough that I understood Wren had not been the only one taking first steps. Part 8, the night the house went silent. On the 9th night, the power went out. Only for 12 seconds. The backup generators caught almost immediately. The lights flickered, died, and returned in low amber emergency mode. But in Ravenna Kale's house, 12 seconds was enough to make every guard move. I was in the north sitting room folding Wren's clothes while she slept in the nursery. The moment the lights changed, the house went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence made by trained people listening for the shape of danger. My body knew before my mind did. I ran to the nursery. Wren was awake, standing in the crib. Not crying yet, but close. Her face crumpled the instant she saw me. I lifted her. The door opened behind me. Ravenna stood there in a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to her elbows, a gun in one hand, her hair loose for the first time since I had known her. Not styled. Not controlled. Loose around her face, making her look younger and more dangerous at once. She saw Wren. Saw me. Lowered the gun immediately, turning it away before Wren could understand anything except that Ravenna had come. What happened? I asked. Testing a perimeter. That sounds like a polite way to say someone tried to break in. Yes. My arms tightened around Wren. Ravenna's eyes dropped to the movement. They did not get past the outer gate. But they tried. Yes. Crane. Likely. Likely. A word with teeth. Wren reached toward Ravenna. Even half asleep, frightened by the lights and my fear, She knew where she wanted to go. I hesitated. Ravenna saw the hesitation. She set the gun on the high shelf by the door. Then she held out her bare hand. Not to Ren. To me. May I? The question was quiet. It should not have undone me. It did. Because everyone else had always taken from the urgency of the moment. Taken decisions. Taken space. Taken my ability to say no, by making no too expensive. Ravenna asked. With danger at the gate. With guards moving through the halls. With Ren reaching for her. She asked me first. I gave Ren to her. Ravenna took her carefully, settling Ren against her hip. My daughter's hand found hers immediately. The crying never came. Ravenna looked at me. You are shaking. I'm fine. No. I said I'm fine. And I heard you lie. Anger flashed through me. Useful anger. Familiar. You don't get to decide what I am. No, Ravenna said. I get to notice when you are standing in my house barefoot at 2 in the morning, shaking hard enough to drop the blanket in your hand. I looked down. I had not realized I was holding one. Ren's yellow blanket. The one constant from before. My fingers were clenched in it, so tightly my knuckles hurt. Ravenna shifted Ren slightly and extended her free hand again. This time to me. Open palm. Scarred knuckles. No command. No assumption. You can hold on, she said. I stared at her hand. The one nobody touched. The one Ren had claimed. The one Ravenna offered, as if it cost her something, and she had decided the cost was acceptable. I wanted to. That was the terrifying part. Not that she offered. That I wanted. My hand moved before my fear could stop it. I placed my fingers in hers. Ravenna closed her hand around mine. The world did not change. The gate did not vanish. Sila's did not stop existing. The debt did not dissolve into mercy. But my body, traitor and witness, believed for one breath that I had stopped falling. Ravenna's hand was warm. Strong. Still. She did not squeeze too hard. Did not pull me closer. Did not make the comfort into a claim. She simply held. Ren, nestled between us, sighed and laid her cheek against Ravenna's shoulder. The three of us stood in the amber emergency light while the house moved around us, and I thought, this is how people become dangerous to you. Not by threatening to leave. By making you want them to stay. Part 9, what Ravenna refused to say. The attempted breach changed the house. Not visibly. The flowers still arrived in the front hall every morning. Sabine still corrected Ravenna's coffee intake with the grim courage of a woman who feared neither death nor unemployment. Ren still demanded Ravenna's hand before breakfast and after naps, and whenever she felt the household required emotional restructuring. But the guards doubled. The gates stayed closed. The city outside the windows began to feel less like a place I had escaped and more like something waiting to reclaim me. Ravenna became quieter. Not colder. She had never been warm in any ordinary way. But the quiet changed. It gathered around her. I found her in the gallery one evening, standing before a portrait of a woman with Ravenna's eyes and none of her restraint. The woman in the portrait wore emeralds at her throat and white gloves on her hands. She looked like someone who had mistaken elegance for mercy and been rewarded for it. Your mother, I asked. Ravenna did not turn. Yes. I almost apologized for interrupting. Then stopped. Progress. She was beautiful. She was strategic. That's not the same thing. No. I stood beside her. Ren was asleep upstairs. The monitor in my pocket hummed faintly with the soft static of her breathing. Ravenna's hands were clasped behind her back. Bare. The scars on her right hand looked silver in the gallery light. Did she give you those? I asked. The question escaped before fear could civilize it. Ravenna looked at me then. For a moment, I thought she would refuse. She had every right to. Instead, she looked back at the portrait. No, she allowed them. That was worse. The words fell quietly. Heavily. She arranged a marriage contract when I was 17, Ravenna said. The family wanted guarantees. I objected. My stomach turned. They bound my hands to teach me the symbolic value of surrender. Her voice did not change. That made it worse. I broke 2 fingers getting free. 3, depending on who tells it. Sabine says 4 because she likes accuracy when it makes people uncomfortable. I said nothing. There were no good words for some things. Ravenna continued. I took control of the family business 6 years later. The contract family lost everything 12 days after that. I looked at her hands. No wonder she wore gloves. No wonder no one touched them. No wonder Ren's grip had stopped the room. When Ren grabbed your hand, I began. Ravenna's jaw tightened. Yes. You could have pulled away. I know. Why didn't you? She was quiet for so long, I thought she would not answer. Then she said, because she did not take it. I looked at her. She asked the way babies ask, Ravenna said. Without language, without strategy, without wanting anything from me except contact. Her hand flexed once. I did not know what to do with that. And now, the corner of her mouth moved. Not a smile. Not quite. Now she has a schedule. I laughed softly. Ravenna looked at me. The portrait watched us both. You're good with her, I said. I am learning. She loves you. That word again. Love. This time I said it. Ravenna's expression did not shift, but something behind her eyes did. She is a baby. Babies love. Babies attach. People who are scared of being loved call it attachment. That was too much. I knew it as soon as I said it. Ravenna turned fully toward me. The gallery felt suddenly smaller. Not threatening. Focused. You are becoming less afraid of me, she said. No. One eyebrow lifted. I'm becoming afraid of different things. A pause. What things? I looked down at her hand. The scarred one. The one Ren had made ordinary by wanting it. The one I had held during the power outage and thought about every night since. I'm afraid of wanting to hold on, I said. Ravenna became very still. Then she did something I did not expect. She stepped back. Not away in rejection. Back in offering. Space. The one gift she gave more carefully than money, medicine, rooms, or protection. You are allowed to want, she said. You are also allowed not to act on it. I looked up. And you. Her gaze held mine. I am trying to remember the same thing. Part 10, The Woman at the Gate. Sila's crane appeared at the gate on a Thursday morning. Not in person. He was too much a coward for that. He sent his mother. I had never met Isolde Crane before, but I recognized her immediately from the shape of Silas's face made sharper, older, and more deliberate. She arrived in a cream-colored car with a driver, a lawyer, and a bouquet of white flowers no one accepted. Sabine took one look at the security feed and said, "Absolutely not." Ravenna, who was feeding Ren small pieces of pear at the breakfast table, because Ren had refused to accept fruit from anyone else once she realized Ravenna would cut it into smaller cubes, did not look up. Let her in. I froze. Ravenna's eyes moved to me. Or don't. Just like that. A choice. In front of everyone. No performance. No delay. My throat tightened. I don't want her near Ren. She will not be near Ren. I don't want her in the house. Then she will stand at the gate until her shoes learn humility. Sabine looked pleased. I should have said no. Every survival instinct said no. But fear is exhausting when it has nowhere new to go. I wanted, suddenly and fiercely, to stop hiding from people who had already taken enough. I'll speak to her, I said. Ravenna set down the pear knife. No. I stiffened. You just said. You will not speak to her at the gate. You will speak to her in the east receiving room with me present if you choose to speak at all. Ren remains upstairs with Sabine. The conversation is recorded. The lawyer remains outside the door unless invited. I stared at her. That is a lot of conditions. That is the difference between courage and self-harm. I hated how often her sentences made me want to argue and rest at the same time. The east receiving room had pale walls, hard chairs, and windows facing the front drive. It was not a room designed for comfort. It was a room designed for people to understand that comfort had not been promised. Isolde Crane entered wearing pearls and concern. Ilara, she said, as though my name saddened her. I did not answer. Her eyes flicked to Ravenna. Madame Kale. Mrs. Crane. Ravenna did not offer a hand. Isolde noticed. Of course she did. I came because my son is devastated. A sound left me before I could stop it. Almost a laugh. Almost grief. Isolde's mouth tightened. He made mistakes. He committed fraud, Ravenna said. He was afraid. So he hid behind a pregnant Omega and left debt collectors to find her. Isolde looked at me. I understand your anger, truly, but Ren is his daughter. Ravenna's gaze sharpened. The room cooled. Isolde continued, brave or foolish. She deserves to know her father, and whatever arrangement you have entered here. Careful, Ravenna said. One word. Quiet. Isolde's lawyer shifted outside the door. Isolde swallowed. I only mean that a young mother in desperate circumstances can be influenced by powerful people. There it was. The shape of the attack. Not today, perhaps. But soon. They would not claim I had run because I was hunted. They would claim I had been taken. They would make Ravenna's protection look like captivity. They would make my fear look like instability. They would make Ren into leverage, because men like Sila's never stopped using other people's lives as doors. I stood. My knees shook. But I stood. I begged your son to answer one message, I said. One, I told him I was pregnant. I told him I was alone. I told him men were coming to my job asking questions about his debt. Isolde's face remained composed. He was not well. I was not safe. That landed. Not on her, perhaps, but in me. I had said it. Plainly. Without apology. I was not safe, I repeated, and he knew. Ravenna did not move. But I felt her attention beside me like a wall. Isolde's eyes flicked to her again. You cannot keep them forever, she said. Ravenna smiled. It was the first time I saw her smile fully. It was terrible. Not because it was cruel. Because it was certain. I am not keeping them, she said. I am standing where Ilara asked me to stand. I don't believe that. No, Ravenna said. People who drag others by the wrist often struggle to recognize a hand being offered. Isolde left with her flowers. The lawyer left with a face like folded paper. I stood in the receiving room after they were gone and realized my whole body was shaking. Ravenna's hand appeared in my vision. Palm up. Scarred. Waiting. I looked at it. Then at her. You keep doing that. Yes. Offering. Yes. What happens if I take it too many times? Her eyes held mine. Then I will keep learning how to hold it properly. Part 11, the day Ren walked to her. The first time Ren walked on her own, she walked to Ravenna. I wish I could say I was gracious about it. I was not. I had been coaching her for weeks. Hands out. Soft rug. Encouraging voice. Tiny steps from sofa to ottoman. Ottoman to my knees. My knees to the toy basket. Every time, she collapsed laughing into my arms like falling was the true point of the exercise. Then Ravenna came home early. The day had been difficult. I could tell from the way the guards avoided speaking unless spoken to, and Sabine put tea down in front of Ravenna without comment. Ravenna entered the north sitting room still wearing her coat, gloves in one hand, face arranged into the kind of calm that had edges underneath it. Wren was standing at the sofa, holding on with both hands. She saw Ravenna, let go, and walked. 4 steps. Unsteady. Outraged by gravity. Completely determined. Straight to the Mafia queen. Ravenna went still in the doorway. I stopped breathing. Wren took the 5th step, made a triumphant sound, and fell forward. Ravenna dropped everything. Coat. Gloves. Phone. Whatever terrible day she had carried in with her. She crossed the distance in one motion and caught Wren before her knees hit the rug. Wren laughed so loudly Sabine appeared in the doorway. I was already crying. Ridiculous. Immediate. Helpless. Ravenna looked at Wren in her arms. Then at the space Wren had crossed. Then at me. She walked, Ravenna said. Her voice was different. Almost disbelieving. Yes, I managed. To you, apparently. Something like guilt moved across her face. I wiped my cheeks. Don't you dare apologize. I was not going to. You looked like it. I was considering whether celebration would be more appropriate. I laughed through the tears. Wren clapped once, pleased with the general emotional disorder. Ravenna looked down at her. Then, very carefully, she smiled. Not the terrible smile from the receiving room. Not the almost smile from the archives. A real one. Small. Unpracticed. Gone quickly because it seemed to frighten her. But real. Wren touched Ravenna's mouth with one finger, as if checking where it had gone. That broke me further. Ravenna brought Wren to me. I expected her to hand her over. Instead, Wren reached for both of us. One hand to me. One hand to Ravenna. Demanding the arrangement she preferred. We sat on the rug because Wren insisted. The Mafia queen, the runaway Omega, and the baby who had apparently decided walking was useful only if it got her to the people she wanted. For a while, nothing happened. No Crane threats. No legal papers. No guards. No city. Just Wren walking between us over and over, laughing every time she fell, furious every time we tried to help too soon. At some point, her little hand grabbed mine and Ravenna's at the same time, pulling us closer with all the authority an 11-month-old could command. Our fingers touched. Ravenna did not move away. Neither did I. Wren looked between us, satisfied. Then she took another step. That night, after Wren slept, I found Ravenna in the nursery. She was standing beside the crib. No gloves. No coat. Her right hand resting lightly on the rail where Wren's fingers could find it if she woke. She walked to you, I said. I know. You sound worried. I am not a safe destination. The words were so quiet I almost missed them. I stepped into the room. The carved birds above the crib turned slowly. You caught her. That is not the same thing. It is to a baby. Ravenna looked at me then. There was something unguarded in her face. Something raw enough that I finally understood. Ravenna was not afraid she could not love Wren. She was afraid she could. She was afraid love would make a promise her life could not keep. I crossed the room. Stopped beside her. Looked down at my daughter asleep in the crib. She keeps choosing you, I said. She is too young to understand what I am. No, I said. She is too young to be impressed by what people say you are. Ravenna's hand tightened on the rail. I placed mine beside hers. Not touching. Close. A choice waiting between us. She knows who catches her, I said. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then Ravenna's little finger shifted. Just enough to touch mine. Part 12, the night I stopped running. The legal papers came 3 days later. Not delivered quietly. Not through a normal office. A court courier arrived at the gate with 2 police officers, 3 journalists, and the expression of a man who had been promised this would be simple and had begun to suspect he had been lied to. Silas Crane was petitioning for emergency custody. The petition claimed I was unstable. It claimed I had disappeared with his child. It claimed Ravenna Kale had coerced me into her home and was using me in a personal vendetta against the Crane family. It claimed Wren was in danger. I read the papers in Ravenna's office while Wren slept upstairs and felt myself leave my body one sentence at a time. Unstable. Disappeared. Coerced. Danger. Words were handles. Ravenna had told me that. Now Silas had found mine. Ravenna stood behind her desk, reading her own copy. Her face gave away nothing. That made me angry. I needed something from her then. Not calm. Not strategy. Something human. He's going to take her, I said. No. You don't know that. Yes, Ravenna said. I do. How? Because I will not allow it. The anger sharpened. You can't just say that. Her eyes lifted. I can. No, you can command guards and doctors and lawyers and everyone in this house, but you can't command a judge. You can't command a court to see me as a person when men like Silas have spent my whole life making people see women like me as problems to manage. Ravenna went still. I kept going because stopping would have meant falling apart. And you can't keep saying you won't let things happen like the world listens to you just because everyone else does. Silence. Large. Terrible. Then Ravenna set the papers down. You are right. That stole whatever I had been ready to throw next. She came around the desk. Not close. Closer. You are right, she said again. My certainty does not make the court safe. My resources do not erase what he can do with the right language in the wrong room. I should have said something accurate. I swallowed. What? Her voice lowered. I will fight him with everything I have. I will put every document, witness, record, and lie under enough light that he regrets learning to write his own name. I will not promise you ease. I will promise you effort. Mine, all of it. The anger cracked. Grief came through. I'm so tired. I know. He left us. He left before she was born. And now he can just come back because he decided she matters. No, Ravenna said. He can try. I looked at her hands. Bare on the edge of the desk. Steady. Waiting. I want to run, I admitted. I know. I have money in the coat hem. The old one, I kept it. I know. I looked up sharply. Ravenna's expression did not change. Sabine found the stitching when she sent the coat to be cleaned. She put it back exactly as it was. I laughed once. Almost hysterically. Of course she did. She respects escape plans. And you. Ravenna looked at me for a long moment. I respect the part of you that made one. That was when I cried. Not prettily. Not softly. I cried the way you cry when a body that has been braced for a year realizes bracing did not prevent the blow. Ravenna did not touch me immediately. She waited. Always waiting. Always making the space mine before entering it. I reached for her first. Not Wren. Me. My hand caught the front of her shirt. A terrible, clumsy grip. She came to me at once. Her arms closed around me with the same controlled strength she gave everything else. But this was not strategy. This was warmth. Real. Immediate. I cried against the shoulder of the Mafia queen, while legal papers lay on her desk, accusing her of holding me captive. And for the first time since Sila's left, I stopped planning the next place to run. Not because I knew we would win. Because I was tired of letting fear choose the direction of my life. I don't want to leave, I said. Ravenna's hand moved carefully over my back. Then don't. What if staying is stupid? Then we will be stupid, with excellent legal representation. A laugh broke through the crying. Small. Wet. Mine. Ravenna's arms tightened by a fraction. That was the first night I understood the difference between being unable to leave and choosing to stay. Sila's had trapped me with debt. Fear had trapped me with motion. Ravenna opened every door and stood beside the one I chose. Part 13, the offer that was not a K. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Those 2 weeks changed everything. Not because anything became easy. Nothing became easy. Lawyers came and went. Statements were taken. Records were pulled from clinics, hotels, shelters, bus stations, and the basement office where I had sorted medical files while Wren slept beneath the desk. The forged debt documents were found. So were the messages I had sent Sila's. So were the call logs. So was the photograph the first gray-coated man had shown me at the hotel counter, because Ravenna's people found the man, and the man, faced with a choice between loyalty to the Cranes and Ravenna's patient attention, developed a sudden affection for honesty. But while the outside world turned into paperwork and threat, inside the house Wren kept living. Babies are stubbornly disrespectful toward crisis. They need breakfast even when court dates exist. They want the blue cup, not the green cup, even when lawyers are discussing custody. They clap when powerful women enter rooms, whether those women have spent the morning dismantling criminal networks or not. Wren did not care that Sila's had filed a petition. She cared that Ravenna had missed afternoon snack twice in 1 week. On the third missed snack, she took action. Ravenna came into the nursery at dusk, exhausted in the quiet way that meant she had spent the day being more dangerous than usual. Wren was on the rug with blocks. She looked at Ravenna, then deliberately turned away. Ravenna stopped. I pressed my lips together. Sabine from the rocking chair murmured, "Consequences." Ravenna removed her coat. Wren did not look. Ravenna sat on the rug. Wren picked up a block and handed it to me. Pointedly. Ravenna looked at me. I shrugged. She waited for you. I was delayed. She is 11 months old. File a written appeal. Ravenna looked back at Wren. Wren. Wren examined a red block with great interest. I apologize. Wren looked at her then. Ravenna held out her right hand. A peace offering. Wren considered it. Slowly, with the solemn cruelty of a tiny judge, she placed one block in Ravenna's palm. Ravenna accepted it. Thank you. Wren gave her another. And another. Within 4 minutes, Ravenna was holding 6 blocks, 1 cloth bird, and the corner of Wren's blanket, apparently forgiven but not yet released from accountability. I watched them and felt something in me settle so deeply it hurt. Later, after Wren slept, Ravenna asked me to walk in the garden. The iron trees moved above us in the wind. The house glowed behind us. There were guards somewhere beyond the hedges, but not close enough to hear. Ravenna walked beside me, with her hands visible at her sides. No gloves. She had stopped wearing them around me. I did not know when that happened. Or I did, but I was afraid of the answer. There is something I want to ask you, she said. My heart changed rhythm. Okay. This is not about the hearing. It will not affect your protection, your rooms, your work, or Wren's care. Nothing changes if you say no. That is a frightening introduction. It is an accurate one. I looked at her. She stopped beneath the iron trees. Wind moved through the branches, making them whisper against one another like the house was listening. I want a petition for legal guardianship if the court terminates Silas's emergency claim, Ravenna said. Not adoption. Not yet. That would be your decision later, and Wren's when she is old enough to understand. But guardianship would give me standing to protect her if something happens to you, and it would make it harder for the Cranes to use procedural delays as weapons. I took that in slowly. Legal guardianship. Not ownership. Not replacement. A standing place. A shield with her name on it. And me, I asked. Ravenna's expression shifted. Only slightly. But the question had found the other truth. You, she said, I want without legal language. The world narrowed. Not like fear. Like focus. I do not know how to ask for that well, Ravenna continued. My life has taught me contracts, leverage, consequence. I am trying not to bring those things to you. My throat tightened. What are you asking? Her hand moved. Not toward me. Up. Palm open. The same offering as always. But different now. Because I knew what it cost. I am asking if, when this is over, you would still choose to stay. Not because of Crane. Not because of safety. Not because Wren reaches for me. A pause. Because you do. I looked at her hand. The hand Wren had chosen before either of us understood why. The hand that had held me through the power outage. The hand offered at the receiving room door. The hand that caught my daughter when she walked. The hand that never grabbed first. I'm scared, I said. I know. I don't know what I am outside of surviving. We can find out slowly. I don't know how to love someone without waiting for the cost. I will tell you the cost now. I looked up. Her eyes were steady. Time, she said. Honesty. The inconvenience of being seen on difficult days. The occasional argument with Sabine about whether I am emotionally available enough for a family, which I will lose because Sabine prepares for war before breakfast. I laughed. Ravenna's mouth softened. That is all, I asked. No, there is also the risk that Wren will continue using both of us as furniture. That seems unavoidable. Yes. The wind moved again. This time, when Ravenna offered her hand, I did not hesitate. I took it. Not because Wren needed me to. Not because fear had cornered me. Because I wanted to know what it felt like to choose the hand that had never forced mine. Ravenna's fingers closed around mine. Careful. Certain. Warm. I choose to stay, I said. Her eyes closed for 1 second. Just one. When they opened, something in them had changed. Not softened exactly. Opened. Like a locked room admitting light. Part 14, the hearing. Silas Crane arrived at court wearing grief like a tailored suit. He looked good. That was one of the cruelest things about him. He had always looked good in rooms where other people had to explain pain. Clean shave. Dark suit. Concerned eyes. The exact posture of a man who wanted the court to understand that he had suffered privately and grown from it. His mother sat behind him. Pearls. White gloves. A face composed around disappointment. I sat at Ravenna's table with my hands folded in my lap and Wren's cloth bird tucked into my coat pocket. Wren was not in the courtroom. Ravenna had insisted, and my lawyer agreed. She is not evidence, Ravenna said when the lawyer raised the question. She is a child. So Wren remained at the house with Sabine, probably ruling the nursery with a wooden spoon. I wished she were there. I was grateful she was not. Both truths sat in me together. Silas looked back once before proceedings began. At me. Then at Ravenna. His expression flickered. There it was. Not love. Not regret. Possession offended by trespass. Ravenna noticed. Of course she did. Her hand, resting on the table near mine, turned palm up. Not touching. Available. I took it under the edge of the table, where no camera could see. The hearing began. Silas's lawyer was good. Good in the way expensive lawyers are good when they do not need truth to be on their side, because they have tone, structure, and the patience to make lies sound like concerns. He spoke of paternal rights, of a young father overwhelmed by unexpected responsibility, of mental health struggles, of a mother who had disappeared without notice, of Ravenna Kale's criminal associations, of power imbalance, of coercion, of a child being kept in a fortified estate by a woman with a reputation for violence. Every sentence placed a hand around the story and tried to turn it. I felt myself shrink with each one. Then my lawyer stood. Her name was Amara Venn. She was short, calm, and had the air of a woman who found nonsense personally offensive. She began with dates. Dates are useful because they do not care how handsome a man looks in a suit. The date I told Silas I was pregnant. The date he emptied the account. The date the first debt collector came to my workplace. The date Wren was born. The dates of my messages. The dates of his silence. Then documents. The forged guarantor form. The identification copy, submitted without my consent. The clinic record noting I arrived alone. The hotel security footage of the man in gray. The Blackthorn medical lobby footage. That footage played in court. I had not seen it before. Not from above. Not with the whole scene visible. There I was, smaller than I remembered feeling. Wren hot and crying against my shoulder. The men outside the glass. Ravenna entering. Wren reaching. The room freezing. My daughter's tiny hand closing around Ravenna's. Ravenna stopping. Not pulling away. Turning her palm up. The courtroom watched in silence. Even the judge leaned forward slightly. The footage had no sound, but it did not need it. Some truths are clearer without people explaining them. There was my baby, choosing. There was Ravenna, being chosen. There was me, terrified enough to apologize for my child needing comfort. The video ended. Amara Venn let the silence sit. Then she said, "This is the moment opposing counsel describes as the beginning of coercion. I submit it is the first recorded moment in which anyone with power stopped moving long enough to notice that Ms. Moss and her child were in danger." Silas looked down. His mother did not. Then Ravenna took the stand. The room changed when she stood. It always did. But this time, I saw the change from the inside of it. Not as someone afraid of her power. As someone held by it. She swore the oath. Sat. Folded her hands. Bare hands. No gloves. Silas's lawyer noticed. "Madam Kale," he began, "is it true that you are known in this city as a Mafia queen?" Ravenna looked at him. "I am known as many things by people who benefit from making me sound less boring than I am." A ripple moved through the courtroom. The judge looked unimpressed with everyone. The lawyer tried again. "Do you deny your involvement in organized crime?" "I deny the relevance of rumors to the question of whether Silas Crane abandoned his child and forged debt documents in Ms. Moss's name." "Please answer the question." "My business holdings are documented. If you have accusations, file them in the appropriate court." He shifted. Ravenna did not. "Do you consider Wren Moss to be yours?" The question landed too hard. I stopped breathing. Ravenna did not look at me. She looked at the lawyer. "No." Something cold went through me. Then she continued. "I consider her herself. A child is not property." The lawyer blinked. Ravenna's voice remained even. "If you are asking whether I love her, yes. If you are asking whether I intend to protect her, yes. If you are asking whether I would accept legal responsibility for her welfare, yes. But no, counselor. She is not mine in the way a thing is mine. A pause. Then quieter. She is ours in the way family is ours. By care, by choice, by the daily work of staying. The room was very still. The lawyer recovered. And Ms. Moss, is she yours? Ravenna's eyes moved to me then. Only then. No, she said. This time I understood. Alara is not mine. She is the woman I love. She stays because she chooses to. The distinction appears difficult for men in this case, so I am happy to repeat it as often as required. The judge looked down. Possibly to hide something. Possibly not. Silas's lawyer did not ask that question again. Part 15, the hand she released. I testified after Ravenna. My voice shook at first, then steadied. Not because I became brave all at once. Because bravery is not a transformation. It is a repetition. A hand you keep reaching for inside yourself. I told the court about Silas. About the debt. About running. About Wren's fever. About Blackthorn Medical. About the men in gray. About Ravenna's house. I told them the doors were not locked. I told them there was money still sewn into my coat, and no one had taken it. I told them Ravenna offered help before she asked for trust. I told them Wren reached for her. Then I told them I did too. Silas watched me the whole time. When his lawyer stood to question me, he used a soft voice. That was his mistake. Soft voices had fooled me once. I had developed immunity. Ms. Moss, he said, is it possible that after months of fear and instability, you became emotionally dependent on Madame Kale? Yes, I said. He paused. He had expected denial. I continued. I became emotionally dependent on someone being consistent, on food arriving when it was promised, on doors that locked, on medical care for my daughter, on a person saying she would come and then coming. If that is what you mean, yes. Ravenna's hand was still on the table. Open. I did not take it. Not yet. The lawyer tried again. Is it possible you have confused protection with love? I looked at Silas, then at his lawyer, then at Ravenna. No, I said. I confused danger with love once. I know the difference now. Silas looked away. The judge denied the emergency custody petition before sunset. Not permanently. Not fully. Court rarely gives endings that clean on the first day. But the immediate threat was denied. Wren would remain with me. Silas's claim would proceed only under supervised conditions, pending investigation into fraud, abandonment, and harassment. The Crane debt was referred for criminal review. Ravenna's petition for temporary protective guardianship was accepted for consideration with my consent. It was not everything, but it was the first door closing behind us instead of in front of us. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. Cameras flashed. Questions came like thrown stones. Ms. Moss, are you afraid of Ravenna Kale? Madam Kale, are you holding them at your estate? Is this a custody case or a syndicate dispute? Did you take the child? Ravenna walked beside me down the courthouse steps, not touching me. Wren was at the bottom with Sabine, bundled in a green coat, holding her cloth bird by one wing and looking deeply unimpressed with the press. The moment she saw Ravenna, she reached. Both hands. Ravenna stopped. The cameras went wild. I saw the headline forming before anyone wrote it. Mafia queen takes child from mother outside court. Ravenna saw it too. Her jaw tightened. Then she did something I did not expect. She stepped back. Away from Wren. Away from me. Hands at her sides. Visible. Empty. The reporters quieted by instinct. Ravenna looked at me. Then at my daughter. She is asking, Ravenna said softly. You decide. The whole world seemed to hold its breath. That was the moment everyone else finally saw what I had been learning for weeks. Ravenna Kale did not keep us by closing her hand. She kept us by opening it. I went down the last step, picked up Ren. My daughter immediately leaned toward Ravenna, offended by the delay. I smiled through tears I refused to let fall in front of cameras. "Go on then," I whispered. I placed Ren in Ravenna's arms. Ren grabbed her right hand before settling against her. Exactly as she had the first day. The cameras captured it. "Let them." Ravenna looked at me over my daughter's head. Her hand was still open. This time, in front of everyone, I took it. Not because I needed help walking. Because I wanted the world to understand the difference. No one had taken my hand. I had given it. Part 16, The Family That Stayed. 1 year later, Ren had words. Too many, according to Sabine. Not enough, according to Ren, who became furious whenever adults failed to understand a sentence she felt she had delivered with perfect clarity. She had opinions about socks. Strong ones. She believed spoons belonged in every room and treated anyone who disagreed as intellectually disappointing. She called Sabine Bine, the doctor Doc, and Ravenna Rav for 3 devastating weeks before discovering the word mama and causing an identity crisis in 3 adults at once. I was Mama. Ravenna became Mamarov. This was later shortened to Ravma. Then, on a rainy morning almost exactly 1 year after Blackthorn Medical, Ren stood in the front hall wearing yellow boots, pointed at Ravenna, and said with great authority, "My hand." Ravenna looked at me. I looked at Sabine. Sabine said, "She is accurate." Ren held out her hand. Ravenna gave her the right one. Of course. The scars were still there. They always would be. But Ren traced them now with the casual ownership of a child who had never been taught to fear the evidence of survival. We walked through the iron trees that morning. All 3 of us. Ren between us, one hand in mine and one hand in Ravenna's, lifting her feet too high because puddles were apparently enemies that needed to be defeated with force. The city was visible below the hill. Gray. Restless. Full of people still saying Ravenna Kale's name quietly. They were not wrong to be afraid of her. I knew that better than most. Ravenna was dangerous. She had always been dangerous. But danger, I had learned, was not the opposite of love. Carelessness was. Cruelty was. The hand that grabbed without asking was. Ravenna's danger had become a wall around us, not a chain. A locked gate facing outward. A light left on. A car waiting when I needed to go into the city. A lawyer who answered before the second ring. A woman who came to the nursery at midnight because Ren had a nightmare and somehow ended up asleep in the rocking chair with a toddler on her chest and one hand still available in case I needed it too. Silas was gone. Not dead. Stories like mine do not need men dead to be over. They need them powerless. The fraud case took months. The Crane family lost enough influence that people stopped smiling when they said their name. Silas was granted supervised visitation rights he used twice, and then stopped using when he realized fatherhood could not be performed for cameras without also requiring patience, snacks, and the ability to remember nap schedules. Ren did not ask for him. I did not teach her not to. I simply gave her enough love that absence could not shape her more than presence did. Ravenna's guardianship became permanent 6 months after the first hearing. The adoption conversation came later. Slowly. Carefully. With lawyers, yes, but also with crayons on the nursery floor and Ren placing stickers on Ravenna's paperwork, until the official petition had 3 stars and 1 crooked duck pressed above the signature line. Ravenna signed it anyway. "Legally binding duck," she said. Ren nodded. She understood power. On the anniversary of the day Ren grabbed Ravenna's hand, we returned to Blackthorn Medical. Not because we needed to. Because I did. The lobby looked smaller. That surprised me. Fear enlarges places. Memory keeps them that way until you stand inside them again with different shoes, different breath, different hands holding yours. The receptionist was new. The chairs had been replaced. The glass doors still faced the pharmacy across the street. It was open now. No men in gray coats. No rain that day. Only winter light, pale and clean against the floor. Ren toddled ahead of us, then stopped in the exact place where she had reached from my arms 1 year before. Not exact, perhaps, but close enough for my heart to know it. Ravenna stood beside me. No gloves. She had stopped wearing them almost completely. Not because the city had earned that softness. Because she had decided her hands were not only the story of what had been done to them. Ren turned, looked at Ravenna, held out her hand. Again. Always. Ravenna took it. I watched the two of them and thought about the woman I had been that day. A mother with cash sewn into her coat. A baby burning with fever. A fake identification card. A real name turned into a weapon. A lobby full of people who saw danger entering and did not yet understand that danger was about to choose mercy. No, not mercy. Mercy looks down. Ravenna had not looked down at us. She had stopped. She had turned her palm up. She had allowed a baby's grip to interrupt the machinery of her life. Then she had refused to let go first. That was the part I understood now. Ravenna never refused to let us go because she wanted to keep us trapped. She refused to let fear take us. She refused to let Silas rewrite us. She refused to let the city swallow us quietly. She refused to let me mistake running for freedom when what I wanted, beneath all that terror, was a place where I could finally set Ren down and trust the floor would hold. Thinking, Ravenna asked. I smiled. You always know. You become very still. So do you. I am usually planning something. That is not comforting. It is often useful. Ren tugged Ravenna's hand. Walk. Ravenna looked down. Yes, Commander. Ren looked at me. Mama, walk. I took her other hand. Together, we walked across the lobby. No one stopped breathing this time. No guards shifted. No debt collector waited outside. Just 3 people crossing a room that had once been the end of everything and had become, impossibly, the beginning. At the doors, Ren stopped again. She looked up at Ravenna, then at me. Then she took both our hands and tried to pull us in the same direction with the absolute confidence of a child who had never doubted that if she reached, someone would answer. Ravenna bent and lifted her. Ren placed one small hand against Ravenna's cheek. The scarred hand came up to cover it. Gently. Always gently. What is it? I asked. Ren leaned into Ravenna's shoulder and said, with the sleepy certainty of a child naming the world correctly. Home. Ravenna closed her eyes. I reached for her free hand. She gave it to me before I finished reaching. Outside, the city moved in its endless hunger. Inside, the doors opened. We walked out together. Not because Ravenna Kale would not let us go. Because every day, in every quiet, ordinary, extraordinary way, she gave us a reason to stay. The end. That is Alara's story. That is Ren's story. That is Ravenna's story. A baby with a fever reached for the one hand everyone else in the city feared to touch, and somehow knew it would not hurt her. A mother who had spent a year running learned that not every powerful hand is a cage. And a Mafia queen who wore gloves so the world would not see what had been done to her discovered that one tiny grip could become an entire family. None of them planned it. Ren reached first. Ravenna held on. Alara chose to stay. If this story found something in you, subscribe and leave a comment. Tell me which moment stopped you. Tell me where you are watching from. I read every single one, and the best ones I read on screen. I will see you in the next story.